All right. Well, we went through, we had a lot more to work on this morning uh, with all the presentations from yesterday's, and we're still working on that. So we're going to, let me check our schedule here. So today we have scheduled 10 to 12:30 to go over the 5-year program of research, and then lunch and a drafting session. So it's pretty much from 12:30 to 2:30 an SRB drafting session, and then coming back at about 2:30 to review and go over with everybody. So I think that's good. Um, so it looks like Dave is going to be running this part of the agenda on the 5-year research program. So take it away, Dave.
You can bring up the paper 10, please. Um, while that's being brought up, so the intention is not to spend the full 2.5 hours or so. I'm guessing that was a typo. The intention was just to sort of highlight where we're at with the development of the plan, and just to allow some sort of free-form discussion around key elements that you think we should be incorporating and including. So let me just maximize this.
Dave, are you speaking into a microphone
I am
or
wearing a
is there?
mask. I'm sorry. I know this is. Can you hear me okay?
Is that the microphone next to? Is that the microphone next to? Is that Ian?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're good. Um,
It's, it's just not that loud.
let me
It's
turn
not
up the
coming through
mic
that.
over here.
It's really faint.
If it doesn't work, well, a couple of things. I can speak up, or I can go to my office and take my mask off. But
Sounds a little
okay,
better.
let's give it a go. Yeah. No, I just turned the mic up on the wall. So the intention with this is just to give a general brief overview of the work that we've been doing to develop the next 5-year program, um, without getting into any of the particular details. And the reason for that is that it's still very much in a draft format. Um, the intention is for it to run from essentially the end of this year for 5 years, while we had originally desired to have it ready to go by July. Um, Based on the discussions from the previous SRB meeting, we'd like some more input from you as we frame out, build out the 5-year program. And so it's our intention to take this draft, expand upon it, add in the various elements that are currently missing as highlighted as in development, and then provide that to you again at the SRB meeting in September before we push it to the Commission for additional and final input before we move forward and adopt it. One of the key, I guess, components that the SRB has been pushing for, as you're very well aware, over the years, is to try and make the previous 5-year biological and ecosystem science program fully integrated with the other elements, the other key elements, so the stock assessment and the MSE work that the Commission does. And so the way we have approached developing a new 5-year plan is, rather than focusing on the biological and ecosystem science components, is to try and make it as much as possible a fully integrated science and research program for the next 5 years. And so what we have provided for you is shown in Appendix 1, and again, just a reminder, it's very much a draft at this point, are the key areas and the way that we've tried to develop the focal areas and activities of interest for the Commission over the next 5 years. And so as you have previously seen, and yesterday Giuseppe presented, we had a 5-year plan that was focused on the biology and ecology of Pacific halibut. This new plan is going to outline all of the fisheries data components, the core data collection activities that we undertake, both in port and on our fishery independent set line survey and elsewhere. how that information is also complemented by the biological and ecosystem science, and potentially climatic research and the like, as part of Giuseppe's branch work. Also, the activities that Ian undertakes through the stock assessment and the requirements for additional research in terms of data collection activities, and then biological and ecosystem components. Similarly, for the management strategy evaluation work, and I'm going to walk through all of these in just a little while, and then how we're going to integrate the fishery economics work from Basher as well. So, as I indicated, in terms of many of the components here in the plan, it's very preliminary in nature. We haven't developed the various tables, the deliverables, the funding components. They are all in development, largely based on what Giuseppe has already presented to you, but also trying to integrate that across all of the 5 streams, the core focal areas and activities that are going to be incorporated within the plan itself. So, look, I'm just going to step through some of the key areas for you, and noting, as I said, it's very much in draft format. The background information, I don't think I need to go into that in any great detail, but the overarching goal in Section 2 for the science and research activities really sort of sets the scene of how we are going to move forward with this next 5-year plan, in terms of making it a more of a holistic. Sorry, fighting with the mouse here a little bit. More of a holistic program of work and activities. And so, as I pointed out, we have these 5 core focal areas: fisheries data, biology and ecology, stock assessment, MSE, and fisheries economics, where we are going to focus our efforts over the next 5 years or so. It does link to the IPHC strategic plan, so if you haven't read that, I do encourage you to take a look. And then the document itself sort of outlines some of those other key components within the organizational structure and how it feeds into supporting this draft 5-year plan. Section 4 is all about those 5 focal areas and various activities. At the moment, it's really just a matter of documenting for general information the various components that we already undertake, and then some of those elements that we're looking at expanding upon. And I guess we're including these because I think at times it's clear that while the SRB is familiar with some of the activities we do, in terms of the directed commercial fisheries data collection and other fisheries data collection activities, you may not be fully aware. And by incorporating these within the plan, having them directly linked to the various activities which are published on the IPHC website, it will give you a better understanding moving forward about what our capabilities are, and what we have or are currently undertaking for each of these core activities. So I'm going to run on the assumption that you have explored the current draft, and we put all the active links in there so that you can really get an idea, even down to the level of what information and how the information is being collected in the field, in this case. And that's with the Directed Commercial Fisheries Landings Sampling Manual and the like. So again, it's more reference material. It just will allow yourselves and other stakeholders to have at their fingertips a document that they can then go and really dig down to find out what our sampling protocols are, what we're collecting, and then as we move down through the document, how that information is used in our various sort of flagship projects. It also highlights some of the work that we're doing for the non-directed commercial discard mortality work, subsistence fisheries, and recreational fisheries. And so I don't intend on going into these in any detail. They are the current activities that we have in place, and not referring to any additional components at this point in time. And that's because it's still very much a draft. But please do familiarize yourself with that. In terms of our fisheries independent data collection, it's really from a couple of core areas. Obviously, our fishery independent setline survey platform, which again is linked here with the sampling manual most current year, so that you are able to, and other stakeholders are able to see exactly what we're collecting, and then the potential utility of that data that's collected in various other activities. So again, please do just familiarize yourself with it. There is a lot of research available on the website, which the SRB is familiar with in terms of the optimization of the design for the Fishery Independent Setline Survey, and it gives, yeah, I would just encourage you to explore the website through these links. Similarly, for the Fishery Independent Trawl Surveys from NOAA Fisheries, again, there are links to those activities so that readers can have a better understanding of the types of information that's collected and how it's currently used, and it also potentially stimulate interest in other ways that we can use that information. There are links to the various reports that NOAA provides, publishes, which the IPHC contributes to, and our samplers are more often than not on those vessels collecting the Pacific halibut information. And again, general information, background information of what we already do at this point. The 4.2, the biology and ecology, really is, as you previously noted prior to this meeting, largely the core objectives are continued on from the previous 5-year plan, noting some of the modifications and the move into hopefully some other sort of flagship areas such as the close kin mark recapture. At this point, this section is still quite high level. It's more philosophical, I guess, or about the types of areas that we want to improve our knowledge on. And you have already seen these in many respects in the work Giuseppe presented yesterday, and then also rolling over from the previous 5-year plan. Now, the areas that we obviously have to continue to develop is how we are actually going to integrate each of these core objectives over time into our other activities, including seeking funding, staffing, and other resources to complete them. So while at the moment this is quite an expansive list, it needs to be integrated into a clear timeline of deliverables and how those deliverables are going to be resourced. So again, I'm not going to go through all these in detail. You are very familiar with all of the first 4. We are developing at the moment additional components potentially for looking at climate change, and again, this is something the SRB has asked us to look into, and the Commission as well, as time and resources permit. But again, very much in development. And then 4.2.6 there, again, it's just a place marker at this point. We do some work, and we are undertaking additional work with external groups to further develop various fishing technology, targeting Pacific halibut and also mitigating bycatch and the like. So very much areas in development. 4.3 is all about the stock assessment, and again, Ian has outlined this extensively over the years about the areas that he's been looking into and he needs additional information on, and then also in terms of the previous 5-year plan with Giuseppe and how they've been working together to collect additional information so that it can enhance and improve upon various elements, data going into the stock assessment itself. And so I don't intend on going into any detail here. It's more for information at this point. You're all very well aware of these core areas which you have raised yourselves, both at this meeting and also previous meetings, for additional exploration and research to enhance the data going into the stock assessment. So if I skip down, and we can come back to any of these in particular that you may like to spend some more time on. 4.4 is all about the management strategy evaluation process, and as Alan has covered, and this is really more aspirational at this point. We didn't want to put anything too detailed into the current draft, noting that the Commission sort of put a pause on the MSE work at the annual meeting while they discuss how they would like to proceed with a work plan moving forward. So everything here is really a place marker. There's some aspirational components, and then there are also some key elements which we already know the Commission would like us to explore. But that's why at this point, isn't extensive because we are waiting on the outcomes of that 11th special session, which is next Tuesday, where the Commission is going to direct the Secretariat and the associated subsidiary bodies, yourselves, on where they would like us all to focus with management strategy evaluation over the next period. And so again, that's why this is quite generic. It's something that we're just going to refine after that special session next week. Yes, go ahead.
Dave? It's Sven. Just wanted to suggest that something that we keep adding in our report is that actually start using the MSE to improve our understanding and the sample collection, etc., you know, to test or to prioritize the other tasks. Is that possible to have that as an additional objective, just the general one, you know, to expand the use of this valuable tool beyond the simple tasks of, you know, evaluating management options?
It certainly is something that we can look at and incorporate. We are hearing from obviously yourselves, but also some of the commissioners at the moment, and we're just waiting for that formal direction to use the MSE tool for those types of purposes. As I think Alan has highlighted, there is potential significant work that may be required to do that. And so it certainly doesn't preclude the SRB from making specific recommendations such as that, and that would actually help for this meeting going forward, next week's meeting, so that the Commission has that on board about other potential uses for the MSE. So at this point, I'm hesitant just to go, yes, we'll incorporate an additional element.
No, and that's fine. So I'm just trying to figure out the process. So what you want us to do now in our drafting session is put a recommendation together that says that in relation to the topic of this integrated 5-year research plan. Is that how it would work?
Sorry, I got nuts in my throat now. If that's something that the SRB feels is going to be important from your perspective, yeah, I would suggest that you do make that clear as a request moving forward. And then we can discuss that with the commissioners and see
Okay.
where they feel we should prioritize our resources. Sorry, I'm just going to grab a quick drink of water. Sorry, is there another question while I do that? No water.
So in the pre-meeting document that the SRB prepared, there were about 2 pages of text which had comments on SRB 1810. I would be interested in hearing what the Secretariat feels and if people could respond to the text that SRB prepared prior to the meeting.
Okay. Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just quickly wrap up, because this is just a framework at the moment. I'll just go through the remaining framework for the 5-year plan, and then we can spend the rest of the time, or however much of that time you'd like, doing exactly that. That might be probably the easiest way to go. So if that's okay, I'll just approach it from that perspective.
One of the things that we've talked about is the potential for management procedures that don't rely on an annual stock assessment. Is there anything here in the work plan that's conditional on that? You know, as sort of like these are the tasks we would undertake if a management procedure freed up time to do stock assessments every other year, versus this is what we could accomplish if we're tied into doing stock assessments every year.
So, yeah, this is Ian. I don't think that we have gotten to that point of necessarily delineating in the planning of those two potential avenues. We're, as we've said now several times in this meeting, we're a bit caught in this transitional period where we don't have clear direction from the Commission, and so we don't know what we are planning for over the next 5 years. I mean, I would say that we need to have a little bit of caution in terms of our research planning, that we don't box the commission in, per se, in terms of what options are available to them in the future. And we've had quite a bit of discussion about using the MSE to evaluate research as it may pertain to a finite set of management procedures. But as you point out, Olaf, not knowing what types of management procedures are necessarily on the table, I think we need to maintain our research planning to be broad enough to encompass any of those options should the commission choose to go in one of those directions. So that's really the way we've taken it now, is to try to make sure that we're not precluding any potential avenues in the future. And so by necessity, we're having to cover, I think, a broader range than perhaps if we had only a small handful of management procedures. As Sean mentioned, we could test every research proposal as to whether it would change the choice of management procedure within a small set, and that would actually be much more tractable than, for example, trying to plan research that could be that could facilitate a survey-based management procedure or a multi-year procedure, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. I think having these alternatives shown explicitly could be helpful for the commission in seeing sort of what would they get if they, in terms of additional research accomplishments in the stock assessment realm, if they were to choose a management procedure that freed up your time from not having to turn the crank every year on a new assessment. I think they'd probably be impressed at what they could get, and otherwise, the benefits of going to to an every other year or longer stock assessment interval are really kind of theoretical and not easy for them to visualize. So just something to consider for the plan here.
Okay. All right. Well, in terms of the other components under 4.4, it's relatively clear as sort of the key elements at the moment, the overall projects that we need to undertake to collect additional information to enhance the stock assessment. For the MSE, again, just to highlight here, we've just indicated very clearly that the new program of work will hopefully be at least clarified at next week's special session of the Commission. There is a likelihood that it's still going to be the Commission simply highlighting a number of additional areas that they would like us to examine using MSE, but hopefully we'll get a little bit more than that as well in terms of where they would like to go with selecting a primary operating model, but we'll see. Time will tell. So we're just going to have to hold tight on the MSE component at the moment, and then once we know more from that special session, come back to the SRB in September and get additional feedback from you on how we could enhance the 5-year plan, noting that new direction that the Commission will provide. And then in terms of the fisheries economics, I'm not going to spend, again, much time on this. Bash has done a fantastic job yesterday in outlining both the targeted project that she was tasked with, and then also some of the broader framework direction and how useful the fishery economics work could be to the Commission in assisting in making various management decisions. And so at the moment, again, it's a bit of a placeholder here. As we wait for the Commission next week to approve the budget for the fishery economics components moving forward. And so again, the information in here at the moment is more informational, gives you the background, gives you the update on the information presented to you by Basha yesterday, and then also outlines some of the potential utility and how fisheries economics could be incorporated into the other work of the Commission. And again, so we're going to have to wait until next week, and we get a clear direction from the Commission on how they would like to proceed from a budgeting perspective. The intention with the rest of the 5-year plan is that we would obviously have clear measures of access and the delivery schedule for each of the specified projects. based on each of the core areas. Also looking at how we're going to fund that research, noting that at the moment the operational research budget for the biological and ecosystem science components is relatively small and is complemented by external grants, and then obviously the staffing salaries. But then highlighting the work and the platforms that we have for collecting other information, such as our span of fisheries data specialists coast-wide and the information that they can collect in port, and then also our setline survey specialists as part of the Fishery Independent Setline Survey platform. And so these are all elements that are in development. It is still, obviously you can see a lot of work to do to populate those. And I do take note of some of those comments that you've made, and we'll discuss shortly in the pre-meeting brief about how we really need to expand these areas, how we're going to fund the research, what other resources and human resources will be required to undertake the various projects, and then lay those out in a number of appendices to the program so that it's very clear in terms of what are the data deliverables, what will be the research outputs and the specific inputs to the stock assessment and the MSE work as such, and just collating those and integrating those so it's a lot clearer. But that's just something that's very much in work. Giuseppe has presented to you already how he's been achieving that for the previous 5-year plan. Yeah, we have a lot more work to go in meeting that. I don't think there's anything else in particular, again, in terms of future strategic science and research activities. A lot more fleshing out and development here that we need to go through. So I don't think there's anything in particular that I need to cover there. And just as indicated here for the appendices, it just gives you an idea of what we're going to be developing and incorporating within the 5-year plan itself. So that's sort of the broad overview of the framework where it currently stands. Clearly a lot more work to be undertaken. We are very much awaiting the direction from the Commission at next week's meeting, which will help us flesh out this plan in significant more detail. So with that, look, I'm just going to stop and we can just have sort of a broad roundtable discussion amongst the SRB and staff on the line about how we could address some of those concerns that you raised or ideas that you raised in the pre-meeting brief, and see where to from there. So I'll stop there, Chair, and I'll pass back to you, and maybe if you want to guide us through how you would like to hold that discussion.
Well, thanks for that, Dave. Thanks for that overview. I was just getting back to opening up my pre-meeting document to see what what we had said in there. Maybe we can just start out with some general impressions, ideas. I mean, to me, my big question is, okay, how do you want us to participate, help with this? I mean, it's a 5-year research plan is a pretty massive thing. We could comment on all of it, or you know. So I don't know. That's my question. Maybe I'll open it up to some other SRB members if they just want to get some initial thoughts about process, mainly the process at the moment.
Yeah, I think.
I think Kim.
Go on, Kim.
I think Kim was first.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think there was, uniform opinion that, whether this be a planning document or writing a grant or writing a manuscript, there are, you know, some expectations of what you think that you're going to be seeing in here, right? And, you know, so what is the overarching question? You know, where is the literature in the field at this, in the field maybe is, you know, the commission at this particular time, and the management of the species, you know, what's missing, right? And objectives developed based on, you know, pieces that are still necessary for the successful management of the species. And, you know, based on these objectives, these are the specific things that we're going to do. The document read, at least the biological sciences part of it, like we're going to do what we've been doing for the last 5 years. It really didn't, as the SA06 document, the MSC07 document, and the 08 biological document. We're really trying to piece the programs together, and the appendices were really very helpful. In my mind, you know, it would have been great to basically, before leaping off into a proposal of what you're doing next, would be taking a perspective approach and saying, what have we been doing the last 5 years? You know, what do we now know that we didn't know? How is that going to be used? What are the critical pieces of information in each of these different areas, and why are they important to the stock assessment and the MSC as a justification for moving forward with this next 5 years? And if the answer is, you know, we still need to know things about each of these 5 core areas within the biological and ecosystem sciences program, that's fine. But there are things that you've learned, and there are advancements that have made. And, you know, the more information that you have and the more knowledge that you're getting, this should be opening new questions. And I think they have. And I think Ian and Alan, in their documents, really nicely articulated what the needs were that driving that, or should be driving this document. And I think the maybe I'm speaking, I think for the SRB, is there was a lack of introspection about what we've learned, what are the continuing questions, new questions that we need moving forward. And in my mind, that should have been how the document stand and how it should have started.
Yeah, look, no, man, that's a very useful approach, and I would agree. I think that's something that we can develop either as sort of a background opening section, as you say. It would provide an overall review of what we've accomplished, let's say within the last 5 years, but also look at maybe potentially even more broadly than that, about the key areas of research that we've undertaken, the key changes to the way we're collecting information through the Fishery Independent Setline Survey, for example. And then, as you say, I think that would be very useful to sort of summarize what that means in terms of identification of new streams of research that we need to be undertaking and why. And the close-kin market recapture is a clear sort of outcome for the next 5-year plan based on what we already know, the research that we've undertaken, we've trialed and had some success and not so much success, and then moving into these new areas of research which are very, very promising. So yes, no, thank you, Kim. I think that's a very good point, and we'll do that.
Sven?
It was more around how we actually, the idea here is just for us to give general comments and then see how they, you know, and they take the notes from this and maybe make changes or not, or do we have to put this specifically in our report as recommendations, because that's what you had suggested earlier. So it's just the process of how we get you this information and some idea of how you're going to use it or not.
Yeah, look, I would suggest that it's a bit of both. On one hand, it's just like, no, you really need to incorporate one or two particular elements as you see fit, but then also you already provide us with some informal direction, and we'd like to continue that if you're available between now and the next SRB, for example, send you any new iterations, and as your time permits, provide additional informal feedback to help us develop the 5-year plan. Keeping it too structured to the June meeting and then the September meeting is going to limit I think the input that you could provide. And so my preference is certainly that you continue to provide both formal but also informal input into the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that was one of my questions about, you know, how we can participate in this, and that was one of the things I was thinking that might work better than, you know, trying to get, you know, 3 pages of SRB requests and notes and whatever, and try to incorporate those into the document. I think, and even like, to me, this would require a special session if you really wanted to really get into it. But I think what you're suggesting is, you know, you guys, for example, what Kim has just described may influence your organization and of the plan, and then maybe you guys could try that. And I agree, I'm certainly available to kind of bounce things back and forth over the summer, and then maybe see where we're at. Put a good, I don't know how much time we have, but it would be nice to put a good chunk of time aside to see where we're at in September. Olaf, do you have?
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that would be ideal. And then if we could block out half a day or something at the September meeting, maybe more of it, where we then really walk you through the final draft or almost final draft to see if there's any other elements that are glaring as missing. And a reminder as well that this is still going to be there will be high-level elements within the plan, but then we're going to try and drill down to individual projects as much as possible, at least for the next couple of years. Obviously, a 5-year plan is very much commission decision and budget dependent, and those things change. So we don't have to be so detailed in the 5-year plan itself, but any input you can provide would be very helpful. Sorry, go on.
Olaf, do you want to go?
Performance is partly about it's largely about whether there were reductions in uncertainty, right? Either reductions in uncertainty or better quantification of uncertainty. So I think that should really be front and center in terms of the performance measurement, and particularly for the biological program. You know, one measure of performance is whether the results from the biological research were incorporated into the stock assessment or the MSE. Was there some specific parameter that changed, or a structural decision in the MSE or the assessment that changed as a result of that biological research? And I think, you know, sort of highlighting that here in the research plan might be helpful to keep that foremost in mind for guiding the biological research. And we can probably capture that in our recommendations.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
Yep. So for me, I remember I had, I think I saw the previous one, the previous 5-year research plan. I think just before your time, Dave, and a lot of people's time. And the thing that struck me at that time, I think has already been covered by some of the comments here, which is, this is what we do, this is what we're going to continue doing. And to me, you know, I was coming from the perspective of, this is a major science and research institution, and I expected an institutional type research plan. And I think that's what you're hearing from Kim, for example. In academics, we have certain granting agencies have a standard kind of format if you want to apply for fairly large grants and these kind of program level grants. And that's really what you're describing as a program, not a project. So I think I have some notes here from what Kim was saying, and I think we can try to incorporate those into a couple of bullets in the report about the general structure in that sense. Now, to me, the difference between academic research and what you guys do, I mean, fisheries is a risk-based activity, right? You're trying to manage risk. And so the research is really, it's risk-based research planning, right? You're trying to identify and reduce the uncertainties that matter. And to me, that would be the overarching goal and approach to designing a research plan. So if I had one major comment, that would be it. Because I do like some of the things strike me when I see in the overall goal is something that I'm like, well, that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal isn't to collect data. Well, it is for supporting the activities, the routine activities, but in terms of research, you want to identify the critical gaps in questions and then go at those. And again, from a risk assessment and management perspective, given that it's a fishery. The difficulty that I had in the previous 5-year plan and this one is that's a pretty big change, I think, from what the way these are presented. So
Yeah, and I
it's
think
very
maybe that's partly
consistent.
just, yeah, that might be part of the restructuring of it itself. And so while we have the overarching goal, which I think is essentially what you're suggesting, and in terms of promoting obviously the integration, but then also to improve the knowledge and the key inputs. So to reduce that uncertainty and therefore reduce the risk of various management decisions may need to make. But then when you dig down into the specific core subject areas, focal areas, that's where we have those new components, such as outlining the data collection program, and some of those other more generic elements, which aren't specifically research, but are key components to ensuring that they're structured correctly, so that we do reduce the uncertainty in the various the stock assessment and other activities. So maybe it's more of a presentation style at the moment.
I
Can
think
be.
this is Ian again. One aspect that we might benefit from some guidance from you all on is the sort of trade-off between the tactical uncertainty and risk-based focus that Sean, both you and Olaf have brought up, which feeds directly into essentially current management actions and tools. But the balance between that and a more comprehensive research program that seeks to provide for long-term development and understanding of the stock and of the fisheries. And I guess an example I would provide would be that for decades, the Commission used tools that didn't really worry about the sex ratio of the commercial catch. We either fit sexes combined models or simple assumptions were made. And so at the time, all of the supporting evaluations suggested that we really didn't have to worry about that. And then now, so we end up in the last decade realizing that the sex ratio of the catch has been predominantly female, and we would now essentially give our left arm to have some historical information about the sex ratio of the catch, but we find it very difficult to go back and get that information. And so I think one of the things that we struggle with is how to justify a comprehensive program that for which there are aspects that might not feed into current specific needs, but might still create a healthy long-term management of the stock. I don't know if that's making sense.
Yeah, well, it does, but I would characterize what I am suggesting not as tactical, but as strategic research. And I think just what you just described is what I would hope you would do. It would be to sit down and look, and you could even go with some of the things Kim was describing as to what do we know. What are our assumptions, really? You start there, right? What are we assuming about you could go through every component of the stock assessment, of the MSC operating models, and ask what your assumptions are behind every equation in those models. And you would start to question those things. And then decide from there whether that, based on what you know, presents a serious long-term risk or not. And in some cases, you may be able to test that by doing a quick couple of MSE runs and finding out what the effect is. And then designing, if it does, then designing a research program to, define the bounds of that uncertainty and so on. I mean, that's the formula that I would use in structuring a long-term research program.
Ecology of this species that would be really important to know. But one has to prioritize what those parameters are and what those aspects of the biology are and why is it important to know, right? And I guess dealing back with management, it's important to know because you're dealing with sources of natality and mortality and numbers and biomass, right? And so I think Alan and Ian have done a nice job in their sections of documents for this SRB meeting of articulating what those aspects of the biology are. So yeah, going out and understanding more about the species biology is great and it's really needed, but it's needed in a very focused way.
So one thing I think that could help is you're going into the next version that you could do right away and I think it was around the focal areas. You had it structured in activities and then focal areas. And so something like activities, you could even scroll to one of them actually, if you just went back up to give you an example here, probably with any one of them.
Sorry, give me an idea of what components you're talking about. You're within
any of the activities. So you've got main activities and then focal areas, I believe that's the structure above. Go up to the stock assessment section or something.
So this is just a couple of the first examples in the stock assessment section.
I don't see anything. Is your screen?
Nothing's changed on my screen.
Okay, I'm not sure what else to do there.
Maybe the presenter, or has something changed there?
What are you looking at exactly? So, for example, I should be looking at.
We're looking at page 17.
Okay, no, I'm on page 14.
It's frozen on the display.
Okay.
I'm on page 16. We're all talking about something else.
It looks
Well,
like it's frozen,
I see the
so
bottom
if
of
the
16,
team-
top of 17, so I went mostly with
if the
17.
team-
All right, okay, so we're in the same.
If the support team could have a look at that, I'm currently in presenter mode on page 14, bottom of page 14.
Oh,
There you go,
moving.
it's moving now.
Yeah, that's not me.
What?
Yeah.
See controls there and we can move it.
Oh, I think because you got moved across as presenter
Oh, I
or
can move it.
something.
I can move it too.
Now we're going to chaos. All right, how about you move it then,
Oh,
Sean?
it's a free-for-all.
You put us where you want us, Sean.
Okay. Let's see. Let me just go up here. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna go. Here we go. Okay. Stock assessment. This is now stock assessment. Is that, I forget, that's an activity, right?
Yeah, and then you've got these core areas, local areas. Yeah.
Yeah. So here, it starts out with the objective, which is to apply resulting knowledge. I think at this point, under stock assessment, you might identify what the key uncertainties are related to this. You could say, be, this is a good one to make a simple point, but in any case, each one of these should come with a bit of a lead-in narrative as to what it, rather than just what its objective is, what its key, if this is a research plan, but this is a science and research plan, so I'm probably not recognizing that as well, but down here in the focal areas is another one where the one I was thinking of. Yeah, so these are actually pretty good. I forget what section I was looking at that I was thinking of, so.
Whilst Sean is looking, I noticed you had a fair bit on, or a very broad summary on the data collection element, right? And describing what you did. What I wasn't sure is whether that includes the appropriate quality assurance procedures. That's normally what's required now.
Yeah, it obviously we have those in place, but it's not incorporated within the plan at the moment. We've just tried as part of this initial framework to lay out what we're currently doing in terms of those data collection activities and how that information feeds into our other activities, but we haven't gone into the depths of our QC procedures, but we certainly could. Maybe that's just something.
Well, just mention that they will be documented. I mean, if they already exist, it's just a question of making them publicly available, right? That way people can see those things. But the element I was lacking was the evaluation of data collection. I mean, that's a principle. A lot of people see data collection as a linear process, but it isn't. It's supposed to be circular. You do an evaluation, figure out if you're doing what you're doing, is it having the desired results, and are there opportunities to do things better, stratifying, restructuring, and you get that for your fisheries independent data through the model to some degree, but that still doesn't tell you whether you're collecting the right amount of otoliths or, whether you could be getting better precision through other means. And that's really the research element that I think Sean said you can't have in data. It's just what you do. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, look, I'm hearing you loud and clear, and so that's certainly what occurs. And for example, collecting the number of otoliths, what we need, and those types of activities that's undertaken each year, and we set the sampling rates and the like, and so that is reevaluated periodically. So I think we just need to call that out, highlight it, document those procedures on the website, and just indicate on sort of periodicity of those reevaluations, and that really is done from a set line survey perspective on an annual basis, depending on what the Commission has decided upon in previous years. But now we've moved into this sort of 3-year approach for the Fishery Independent Set Line Survey. Those types of sampling rates and the like are very much predetermined each year. The Ray, for example, and Ray, feel free to chime in on the procedures that you undertake in terms of determining the sampling rates in each of the ports. So we do undertake those, and as you say, maybe it's a matter of making it clear in the plan how often they are reevaluated and the procedures that are undertaken. So Ray, do you want to chime in there a little bit if you're online?
Comment just takes
Okay.
Yes. So the sampling procedures in the ports, I think, was the question. Let me know if you can't hear me. So yes, we undertake a procedure at the beginning of each year, mainly undertaken by the Secretariat staff involved in the port sampling program itself, but I review the sampling rates each year, which sets a sampling rate for each individual port, for each individual regulatory area in order to achieve target sampling rates, target numbers of otoliths and biological samples in each regulatory area as a whole, and to ensure that those samples are evenly distributed in proportion to the catch that we receive in the ports, in each port within each regulatory area. And we review different ports which we don't sample, and sometimes we change the ports that we sample. In the past, we've sampled Sandpoint, for example, and discontinued it. We're attempting to ensure that all components of the commercial catch are being sampled. Even if a port is missed, then part of the stock is at least being sampled in a different port. And so I think in the order of folks like Lara and those in the program can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're sampling in the order of 70% of the potential catch in the ports that we do sample, or possibly more than that.
Yeah, I don't know how much you heard of my question, Ray, but to me that isn't an evaluation. That's a procedure that you follow, and the criteria that you use is, do we sample 70% representatively? But it may be that actually you could get away with 35% sample. You know, who tests that? You may get exactly the same stock assessment result with 35% of the sample, or, if you sampled a few more heavily the larger individuals and the other ones, you basically tell the age from the lengths, then you don't need to take the otolith there. Who tests those things to adjust your procedures that you have?
So, okay, I think Ian can partly respond to that in terms of the numbers, the target numbers that we're getting, which is sort of embedded in the question. We do review the ports that we. I can't comment on the impact of these any changes on the stock assessment, but we do review the ports each year that we're sampling in order that we are sampling from all the statistical areas, which are finer scale areas, not management areas, but finer scale areas within each regulatory area, so that we are sampling representatively of the commercial catch in terms of the spatial distribution of that catch. And the expectation is by sampling representatively the spatial distribution, we're also representatively sampling the biological characteristics of the commercial catch, in that we're capturing any spatial differences in mean size or age distribution by sampling in that way. So, if the ports that we're sampling at the moment are those that ensure that we have that spatial distribution captured. Regarding the quantity of samples, could we be sampling at a lower sampling rate and still capture the essential information necessary for the stock assessment? well, that's possible, but that's more of a question for Ian.
Yeah, I can address that. Thanks for the question, Sven. So you've seen our current approach to developing annual FIS sampling plans is very much based on simulating the range, the potential bias, and the variability associated with that. For some of our other data collection programs like the port sampling, we don't have an annual process where we review the magnitude of samples needed and the distribution of those. This has been done on a periodic, mostly ad hoc basis, where we've had one-off simulation or resampling efforts that have gone on to determine sample sizes for the ports and other things. The challenge we have there is that we've also had quite a dramatic change in the way we use some of this information. So, for example, when I arrived at the commission, we're not making use of the spatial information in the commercial sampling the same way that we do now. So now I'm fitting stock assessment models that disaggregate, for example, the commercial data into regions for 2 of the 4 models, but that wasn't done in the past. And so we're trying to balance between having adequate sampling to support what we're doing now and not precluding potential improvements or changes in the way things are analyzed in the future. So the short answer is we don't have an annual process for reviewing the magnitude of sampling. And the longer answer is that we've done this historically on a periodic basis, but it's not been terribly prescriptive because of changing methods over the years.
And I'm not suggesting that when somebody does a review, you change everything. That's not the point. Somebody looks at is what would the benefits of doing it this way be, and then they present it to you. You can potentially use the MSE to look at impacts, although when it comes to age samples, of course, it's very difficult. And then you say, okay, it looks like we can get away with 50% less, but what if, I don't know, next year COVID hits and we don't get port samples, what are the impact? And then you make the decision, but the evaluation is the evidence of what was done and different options to actually put forward rather than simply saying, oh, we change the sampling design every year. But somebody needs to find these new things like you are doing. The sex ratio is a perfect example. You decided that's something that could be done. Well, how would you go and do it? How long is that necessary for? How much of an impact does it have? Those are the evaluations that I think you need to do of the data, because you are working against a limited budget in many ways, right?
Yeah, I agree.
You want to use that budget as effectively as you can.
Definitely, and thanks for those comments. That's certainly an important part of any data collection aspect. The other counterbalance to that is that we don't necessarily have the firepower here to do a full simulation analysis very often on some of these things. And so for some things like the otolith targets in the ports, we haven't reviewed that in quite some time, mainly because we seem to be getting what we need right now. And even at a reduced sampling, we still have the opportunity costs of putting people in the various ports. So once we have somebody in a port, the marginal cost of having them sample a few more otoliths just to make sure we're getting enough is relatively low compared to not staffing that port at all.
Indeed, but you could also evaluate whether you need to sample all those ports. If you compared the characteristics of age, selectivity, etc., between the ports, it may mean that you can actually collect a greater portion of the samples from one port and still be representative. Of course, the question is, are you still representative? Because that's the bias that you want to avoid. But you can quite simply ask that question. And I get your point about not having the people there necessarily to do that, although I would argue that Ray is almost pertinently capable of doing these things. He's doing it for the FIS. Why wouldn't he be able to do it for the port sampling? So the point of the research program is to point out, here is a need. We need somebody for that, because that's what you're kind of taking to the commission and say, that's an important aspect. It may cost us in the short run a little bit of extra money, but in the long run, it's going to save us a lot. That is a strategic decision. Anyway, I don't want to harp on about it. It's just that something that I would have expected to have seen under the monitoring program, or call it a monitoring program within the research and science element. That's a fundamental part of data collection.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and we can certainly incorporate something along those lines that indicates how we're evaluating and testing over sort of a medium to long term, and it's one of the advantages of having this new fully integrated program, is that it's going to incorporate not just, for example, how many odorless we need or which ports we need, but to achieve those data sampling goals, but then we'll be able to overlay other aspects such as the socioeconomic elements that we need to collect information on. We did this year, for example, do exactly what you've just spoken about. We did an evaluation due to a budget cut. We did an evaluation of, well, do we need to staff all the ports this year? And noting that we can pick up samples in other ports where fish from those same areas are being landed. And so in doing that, we were actually able to say, well, for this year, we can go without sampling in a particular port due to a budget cut. And maybe in the future, depending on if those funds are available, we'll be able to layer back in sampling in those particular ports. And so in short, you're entirely correct. We don't need to do everything that we're currently doing. It's just there are a whole range of other benefits that aren't necessarily just related to data collection that we have to overlay and then make those decisions. And so hopefully, once we flesh out this 5-year integrated plan in more detail, we'll actually be able to layer in some of those other components. And so when we do an evaluation and say, well, actually, we don't need to sample this port for a biological data collection perspective in 2023, but we do need to collect the logbooks, or we're going to run this research program to look at chalky halibut or something in processing plants, so you're completely right. It's just going to be, at the moment, we're sort of in our infancy and figuring out how we're going to be able to layer all of that together as part of this plan, and then figure out what makes sense as part of that decision-making process.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think the real benefit of the integration is that you end up being able to compromise and piggyback, as you say. It's basically saying, okay, we're only sampling those ports. Would it matter if you get the histology only from these ports? And then that can be discussed and say, no, for us it's better. But you have all those economies of scale that all of a sudden work into the system, which is you can only get through those evaluations, and that's why I think that would be a really good thing to stress, how you are being very cautious about, or very careful with the commission dollar, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to add, or?
I guess we have talked about it a little bit in the SRB meeting, just making sure that you use terminology that is uniform throughout the document, so you don't end up with misunderstandings of how things really link. And if need be explicit with regards to sampling design at the project level, because you're not going at the project level or the specific research bit, but try and make sure that maturity ogive or maturity schedule means the same to everyone. Maybe have a definition section. I don't know how you can cope with it, but somehow everybody's got to be on the same page in this document, because that's what everybody's working from. Just a general comment.
One question I have for the board in particular is one of the components you added in the brief, the pre-meeting brief, was just discussing about what are the grant priorities, how we're going to target the agencies and the like, and how to incorporate that within the 5-year plan. Because in many ways, we can lay out the 5-year plan, but the last couple of years at this stage are certainly going to be quite, for want of a better description, rubbery in terms of how much we'll be able to deliver upon if they're relying on external funding. And so there would really need to be this identification, from what I'm thinking, is the core elements that we know we can deliver upon based on the expectation that the Commission's going to continue to fund us and that we'll have some level of external funding. But then there's going to be other elements which we're pretty confident we'll be able to deliver upon if we are successful with obtaining additional grant funding, which may also include additional staffing elements within them. So there's really those two elements where we have core Commission contracting party funding, which is relatively secure, versus an unknown component that we need to ensure is structured, we're applying for, we're supporting, and we're relatively confident that's going to come into play. So if you have any ideas about how we could better incorporate or separate or just combine those two elements in the plan, that would be appreciated, whether it's now or later. That would be.
Just a quick question regarding. Go on, Kim.
No, you started. Go ahead.
Just as a question, that really entirely depends on how interactive they are, right? At least in my mind. If it's, I mean, this is, after all, is just a plan. Nobody's going to kill you if you don't deliver the plan at the end of the 5 years. If you have a performance metric that says, you know, assuming money, did we do what we said we would do? You know, so that isn't an issue. Where it becomes an issue is where you say, ooh, we're going to do this bit through grant funding, and then something else that you're guaranteeing it through the IPHC money depends on that information. That would be the only one. So it's a question of, do you have those cases?
Okay. The short answer is we likely will have, noting that some of the change in direction that the research program that Giuseppe outlined is taking. Once we divert our majority or all of our resources to those new areas, the enhancements to the stock assessment are therefore going to be heavily dependent on those outcomes. And so, yeah, you're right. It'll be depending on how we word them and how we couch those deliverables moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I had I appreciated Appendix 2 and 3 in SRB 1810, where you sort of lay out what the research areas, the activities, FTEs required, and then sort of a scope of work and when that would take place. And then you had the commission funded, and then what you're going to be relying on grant funds. And I guess it wasn't really clear, these different activities, is there an interest in the commission of building capacity to be maintaining competence in these areas for the long term, or are these short, really very quick in and out, you know, one grant, one project, get the information, we're done types of activities? And that's going to be really pretty important, because in those areas where it may be tactical, quick in and out, you're going to have to establish, if you're not going to have commissioned people with the expertise taking the lead, you're going to have to establish collaborations. You're going to have to write grants. Maybe they'd have to get submitted a couple of times, and you could be working your entire 5 years of this 5-year period to try to get a grant to fund something, right? So that's a bit tenuous.
No, you're entirely right, and I think at the moment we've highlighted here that these are just the biological and ecosystem science components. Giuseppe and I have had a lot of discussion around how we're going to staff or resource those various projects, and some of them will be, whether it be through students, whether it be through collaborations, short-term contracts. It's sort of the nature that we're moving into with delivering a lot of these projects. It's very much in flux at the moment about how we're going to meet the staffing needs, for want of a better description, of those various deliverables. And Giuseppe, is there anything you wanted to add specifically related to that?
No, I appreciate the comments on that table. I think it's Appendix 3 in Document 10, where there's a proposed timeline of activities related to the 4 new areas in the new plan that we're proposing. And then where do we see, at least at this point, where we would be requesting additional funds that have in turn associated collaborations with other agencies. We didn't get to that detail in terms of identifying the sources of funding, but on the last column where you see grant funds, we identified areas where we are proposing to acquire external funding through collaborations as well, and the possibility of adding additional staff to conduct those projects. So, for instance, if you look at the first 5, the lines under the migration and distribution and dynamics project on the right-hand side, you can see that the first line, which is larval and juvenile connectivity and early life history studies, in that particular area, we don't have currently plans to request additional funding. But we do for the other areas, for instance, population structure and adult migration and distribution, lines 2 and 3. There's a proposed plan. In fact, that is the draft grant proposal that was shared with you to just get some comments on the objectives and methodology to be used. And then, importantly, the projects that we are hoping to undertake starting next year, in 2022, and the first one is the close kin mark recapture studies. There is a plan to request additional external funding, both to conduct the research and also to hopefully provide additional RFTs to contribute to that project. And in fact, in that particular area, we started already communications with potential collaborators in that area. So wherever you see that there's a planning indication that those are real plans for us to consider applications for external funding in the framework of external collaborations as well.
Well, again, a recurrent theme is the devil's in the details, and without the SRB having details in front of them, or us, it's very hard to comment on the logistics and feasibility of what you're planning. Let's say you want to do close kin, and you could use these parentage-based tagging approaches to look at connectivity. That really nice paper that Lori and Ray and other people did, where you had larvae and you were finding larvae, and then you were looking at juveniles. You could do the same thing, but you could tie them explicitly back to adults, to specific spawning areas, and establish connectivity of individuals of different ages if you had assumptions and you had the appropriate sample size and you had the appropriate statistical power based on the variability and the number of genetic markers that you're using. you got to do some simulation studies to know all that. And, that's just one point of many that I would make for this. The devil's in the details, and, we just ain't seeing the details.
Yeah, I think I should say that for those projects that we're contemplating embarking in 2022, we don't have those details yet. I mean, for instance, for that particular project, we just initiated some contacts with researchers that with experience in the field that would precisely assist us in developing those pilot or simulating studies to determine, what do we need to successfully accomplish the goals of embarking in one of those projects. The goals related to assessing population abundance, connectivity, mortality, etc. So just to give the example of that particular project. So this is something that we are contemplating. We just, at this time, we don't have those details yet. We will definitely provide those details as they're available.
So I guess I'm confused about what the SRB's role in this is. So you're presenting the information very, very generally. You say it's a work in progress, and then you at several points asked for SRB help with designing projects or things like that. Here you're saying, well, we're going to move forward with it and we'll let you know when it happens. So there's a bit of inconsistency here. And again, what is the SRB's role of this, and what is the procedure for moving forward to get whatever information you want from us to contribute?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly correct. Is that it's not clear how we're going to have the SRB review various components and provide feedback. At the moment, this is very much a sort of a higher level strategic plan in many respects. There are tactical components that we're needing to initiate very soon, or have already initiated them through the previous 5-year plan. And as we identify the core areas that need to be examined over the next 5 years, that is going to be a matter of, okay, we would like to start planning and initiate this in 2023 or 2024, and we're going to be seeking SRB input into those components between now and then. It's not something that we have planned out in detail at this point, and are unlikely to have it planned out before this plan comes into play. And it's really a case of we need to get SRB input into specific elements from a tactical short-term perspective, and then to help guide us and provide input into our strategic vision for the research program and the overall integrated strategic plan itself. So it's a bit of both, and it's really not the case that we have everything figured out at this point. For example, the close kin marker capture, which we perceive is going to be sort of a flagship, a core area of research moving forward. But that's something that we need to develop. GIUSEP is engaging collaborators. We'll be developing ideas. We're doing some testing in terms of what's actually feasible. And it's just going to be a work in progress. And so it's more, for those types of elements, it's a recognition and agreement from the SRB. Yes, this is clearly an area that you'll benefit from. And we're available to assist in project development, grant proposal review, however it's going to be. But at this time, there's not much more there other than a strategic vision for where we want to go with close kin marker capture. Whereas other elements that are currently in play, there are elements that we can provide to you in more detail and get sort of a detailed technical review and input into short-term grant funding opportunities. So it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, I
a much larger range out there than you may be tapping at this point.
Yeah, this is thanks for the question, Olaf, and because it's a relevant one, and this is obviously again work in progress. We need a little more definition on a number of projects that we have not started yet, on how we're going to be structuring those projects, the specific objectives, the collaborators around them, to determine which sources of funding we're going to tap. I think within the first 5 years, your research plan, and I think the consensus is that we will provide a much more detailed account of the performance of that first research plan in the September meeting. But I think we were fairly successful in drawing funds externally for particular areas that are still going on. In fact, if you look at the one of the appendixes in document 08, appendix 6, you can see that we've obtained during that period, during the 5-year research plan, funds from MPRB. In fact, 2 different grants on 2 different topics, one on growth and the other one on discard mortality rates. We've also been successful with the Solstenstall-Kennedy NOAA funding agency, funding a study on the DMR longline fishery. Those funding agencies are going to be considered in the next iteration. In fact, the research grant the draft research grant that was shared with the SRB is intended for MPRB. Because of the range of topics that in their RFP offers. In fact, the RFP for 2021-2022 for the MPRB contemplates to prioritize research related to stock structure and stock dynamics, which fits really well with our proposed plans to conduct population genomic analysis related to population structure, distribution, and connectivity. We will definitely be looking for additional sources of funding. I think the SRB here can play an important role in guiding us through these strategic areas towards potential sources of funding, hopefully, and maybe even potentially suggest or establish some collaborators as well.
Some private foundations like Lenfest are investing a lot in climate change research, and that would be a great place to start looking as well. That's just an example. I think there are also more fundamental research funding opportunities like National Science Foundation grants. Many of these opportunities might require that the lead institution is something other than IPHC, and that's fine. It just means getting collaborators that are willing to be the ones that receive the money. So I think we hopefully we can have more of a conversation about this and probably broaden out the range of funding sources you're thinking about. Most of us here in the SRB are academics, and we sort of live or die by our ability to go out and find external funding, and would love to be more engaged with that process with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think the SRB's input in that area will be critical for us. Thanks.
Just as a comment on that timeline, it doesn't seem to include the time required to actually get project funding. I mean, if you haven't written a proposal yet, and you don't have the detailed information on the methodology, this is presumably going to take quite a while, and it's nice to have a table like this, but that table has a purpose of providing the detail, and not having that detail kind of means that you put in large blocks, just starts here and that's it. So I think I like the table. I wouldn't necessarily put it in the document, because this may well be something that people hold you to.
Yeah, what about one of the ideas of sort of, as we incorporate the other areas of the plan, noting that this is just the biological and ecosystem science components at the moment, it might become clearer in terms of how we will be transitioning between various project lines, but also changing the way it's presented here to indicate that, okay, at a certain point in time, this is where we're going to commence project development, grant funding proposals, and it may well be a year or more of that type of work. And again, the close kin mark recapture is an example where effective this month, we've started that process of seeking collaborators. We're going to be doing some initial examination of the resources and data that we already have available to see what's possible. And so there would be a period of, for want of a bit better description, feasibility testing and exploration, and then a period of grant writing, and they would be represented in different ways. And then the remaining element of it, whether it's going to be to the end of the 5-year plan, is presented in a different way, that, well, this is dependent upon successful grant funding or successful exploration of what's possible. And that way, it's not just a case of indicating that, okay, from early 2022 to the end of 2026, we're going to be doing close kin marker capture. It becomes a breakdown of examination, exploration, grant funding, secure resources, and then the actual project itself, which is based, tentatively based on successful completion of those first elements.
Yeah, you could just use different colors for those elements. It would make it quite clear. And it then becomes automatic. If there's a delay in getting the grant funding, well, you still know how long the project is. It just gets shifted to the right. And then you don't have those concerns over people saying, you said you would.
Okay, no, I think that's valid, so we'll modify that, yeah.
Is there in Canada, we have Genome Canada and Genome BC, and each province has their own sub-agency. But something like close kin marker capture would be exactly what they would be looking, the type of work they're looking to fund in their Genome BC has a fisheries, actually, somebody who's trying to get applications in fisheries, but they're providing, money to get these things up and going, provided that they'll be used in some application and taken over later on, which is exactly your situation.
Yeah, Ben Coop
So
and Willie
you can
Davis.
certainly get something going. Sorry?
Yeah, Ben Coop and Willie Davidson out of Victoria, right? They've had huge grants to develop microarrays and genomic capabilities for species of economic concern like Atlantic salmon, for instance. So yeah, there's been a very large effort by the Canadian government and for provinces, and there have been many individuals that have been, internationally leading sources of genomics work in fisheries, including in BC.
Yeah, thanks
So
for
you might get in
that.
touch with them because somebody like, they could fund the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I actually look at Genome Canada and Genome BC in particular for potential funding opportunities. I'm quite familiar with the funding organization. In fact, 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I actually participated in an international project with Genome Canada. Here in Spain, Canada had a joint proposal on flatfish genomics. about 2008. So yeah, that's a good idea, just to keep keep the context with Genome Canada and Genome BC in particular.
Yeah, and you don't have to be Canadian citizens. Our lab has had 3 Genome Canada grants. You have to be working with somebody in Canada, but you don't have to, the PI does not have to be Canadian. Or at least that used to be the case.
So I wonder if part of this
Oh,
plan itself, there's also a need to sort of highlight those kinds of more processes, for want of a better description, of for each project that's new and upcoming, that we'll be outlining exactly what would occur in terms of conceptual design, the consultation with the SRB, linking it back to the IPHC process in that regard, seeking funding, and then Giuseppe already has a very detailed document for each of the projects in the biological and ecosystem science program in terms of PIs or potential PIs, potential collaborators, potential funding sources. We wouldn't want to put all of that detail into this plan, but maybe it's just something that we can make reference to, that this is also a process we go through for each of these projects moving forward. I wonder if Ray or Alan or anybody else has any other comments that you might want to add as well. Sorry, Chair, go ahead.
no, that's fine.
This is Alan. May I make a quick comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of the comments and suggestions of using the MSE to investigate a lot of the at least the range of uncertainties that's important for research and to justify research being done. With that being said, I think the SRB has also noted that potentially a priority task right now is to put a MP in place. So I personally think that getting an MP in place is a priority to at least me, and then once an MP is in place, that we can really start to investigate these uncertainties and research avenues that you're talking about that are related to that management procedure in particular. The choice of a different management procedure might actually change some of those outcomes as well. So I think I appreciate those comments. I'm just not sure how much time we have, or if it's that's in the prioritization of tasks to actually be using the MSE right now to be doing that research justification.
I'm just, the last part of what you said, that you're not sure you have the time for that task, or that you have it.
Well, I think given the time that it will take and the resources we'll need to make sure the commission has everything they need to choose a management procedure, and the further development of some of the elements in the task list to make sure that the simulations are robust for the evaluation, would not leave much time to be doing additional analyses to justify research activities using the MSE as well. So I think there's a progression, a sequence of events that needs to occur with the MSE, and right now I'm still focusing on developing those uncertainties within the operating model for robust analyses, and then getting an MP in place, and then given that we have a management procedure that the commission operates under and a well-developed MSE is when I think that we can really start to use it to integrate with the research planning.
Okay. So using the MSE as a research tool really depends on having an MP in place, and getting an MP in place requires a lot of work at the beginning.
It,
Basically,
it
from
it
now
still
until it's done.
requires some work, and I think there's some work to be done as well in uh, coding in and putting into the operating model necessary processes to actually do those investigations of research. You know, making sure that we have the ability to vary certain processes in the operating model so that we can test the bounds thing per se.
As a compromise, Alan, do you think you would be able to use that as an explanation of the development of those things, and not say in this 5-year time plan we can't formally use this method except where those facilities already exist, but the plan is to have a framework by the end of the 5-year that for the next 5-year plan you actually can hit the ground running and have those things in place to do the evaluations of the biological data or whatever research was proposed in the next 5-year plan to prioritize that?
I would say definitely, and I think that's a great way moving forward. In some discussions I've had with Secretariat, is that we also have a longer term, a longer than 5-year vision of the MSE, and it does include those things that you just mentioned, Sven. And to be at the end of this 5-year plan, to be able to be up and running with those types of analyses and using the MSE as a tool for many different analyses at the IPHC.
Get the thing ready, and you need time for that.
That's a great suggestion.
I'm not sure. I don't recall if we have a bullet in the report already for that, but kind of sketched one out here. So yeah, it won't be. It'll be a noted, just to get it out there. Is there anything specific, Dave, or anyone really, that you want us to highlight in the report about this at this point?
For me, it's really noting that it was a draft framework and it's something that's going to continue to be developed, particularly based on next week's Commission decisions. And then more broadly, in terms of the elements that you've already discussed and you've highlighted in the pre-meeting brief, it's really just to hear that the SRB is willing to continue to engage with us intersessionally, to further make improvements, and then to look more formally at the September SRB meeting to see if there's any final suggestions for redirection or improvement that could be made. Other than that, I think it's really just a matter of just being sure and confirm that the SRB is available for that level of interaction and contribution.
Sure.
Okay. So I am, to the degree that I can. I'm going to be fairly, well, I do have holidays at some point, but you know, it's a couple of months, so I'll be as available as I can.
Question?
Yeah, thank you for that, Olin.
And I'm the same as Sean. You can't rely that I'll be able to, if you send it to me and say, can we have an answer by tomorrow? There are times when that isn't going to happen. And then the fact that you sent it to me doesn't count. We just have to see how it goes. But in principle, we spend a lot of time in our SRB meetings discussing these things. And actually, I think doing it then will make the process later on a lot more efficient. So one way or the other, at the moment, that feedback or that information doesn't seem to be influencing how things are done. And that's a bit frustrating. So trying to front load it, I think, is a better idea. So I'll certainly try to do as much as I can with that.
Right.
Yeah, and our lab has done a lot of work in all areas of migration and population dynamics using genomics data, including close kin genetic parentage-based tagging studies. So whatever we could offer in that area, including simulation studies looking at sample sizes needed under assumptions of where and when and how you're sampling and number of loci and things like that. So yeah, whenever you have something to share, I'd be happy to provide comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim.
So there you go. It's unanimous. SRB is willing to engage in intercessionally. So we'll put that in.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Well, that sort of wraps up agenda item 9, Chair. We're about half an hour early, which is good, and it gives you more time to edit the report itself. How would you like to do that for the next little while? Noting that there were some additional comments provided by Kim early this morning that we hadn't incorporated into the version sent back to you. Would you like to just spend now a couple of hours, adjourn, or how would you like to go ahead with the drafting session?
Well, I think the version you're just referring to, I think we've been adding to that as well. Pretty sure.
Okay. I don't think so at this point.
I don't think.
I think this morning's session has really been more interactive. We just presented the framework, and then it's just a matter of for you to incorporate whatever text you'd like for this agenda item 9. Other than that, the version I sent to you this morning is fully updated with summaries from Secretariat staff. So it might just be best if you go into the side meeting room again, take a break, whatever you want to do, edit up that report again with your final comments. Send it back, we'll clean it, and then we can go through at a particular time this afternoon. We can go through it in detail with everybody.
Sounds good. Yeah, we had finished up until the economics section. We were just starting the economics section when the 10 o'clock hit this morning.
Okay, brilliant. Well then,
Yeah, so we can wrap that up and add the comments on this.
One last little question regarding the proposal. Did you want our comments on that proposal that you were, I think, sending out next week?
Oh, you mean for the MSC?
No, there was a proposal. It was a Giuseppe's proposal, and it was to do with the genomic stuff.
I'd suggest you just provide that direct to Giuseppe, because I don't think that was presented as a paper as such for this meeting.
Okay, fine. I think we may have included, I don't know what Sean did in the end, but I think, did you include it in that document for the pre-meeting that we sent in the end?
No,
don't know.
I did
don't
not
think
see any
so.
reference in the pre-meeting document, in the
Okay.
pre-meeting notes regarding that.
There were very general comments about the feasibility of the project and not linking those elements to the design. So I'll dig those out and I'll pass them to you directly.
All right, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we'll end it at that. We'll go into the breakout and decide how we're going to proceed here over the remainder of this session and lunch and the drafting session. So we'll maybe
just keep
well,
us
anyway,
posted.
we'll send something out from the breakout room.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, so just give us a heads up. At the moment, we're scheduled to meet here again at 2:30. Obviously, once you're finished, we'll need a little bit of time to collate that into the final report. So please just keep us posted through the presenter chat and email, and we'll all be available.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, Secretariat, and move them, the SRB across to a breakout room. Thank you.
I think it was through the exceptional circumstances where you started talking and about people not liking what they see come out of the management procedure, and so not wanting to adopt one, and so on. And one of the things we thought about was producing some basic information, almost not it wouldn't be empirical because you have to derive it from the model, but some statement about the surplus production that's being produced from the stock, given, as estimated by the stock assessment, and then showing how the fraction, what fraction of that production is being harvested and what fraction is being, put towards spawning biomass and things like that.
This is already
Sean,
something
just to
that
add-
this is something
just
that
to
I
add-
do
oh,
already.
Sorry, go ahead,
and
Ian.
Go ahead, Ian.
Sorry, Olaf.
No, you go, and then I'll jump in after.
I was just going to say, I already do something like this every year, and so I can summarize those recent results and present you guys with how I've been presenting that information to the commission, and I think it'll be a good point for discussion.
Great.
Great.
The
And
broader
that way,
context,
it just
the broader context here was just trying to get some simple heuristics that are that are kind of confirmatory that this complicated assessment model is also consistent with simpler approaches.
Sorry,
We had some discussion.
The calculation of surplus production would be based on the assessment model, correct?
Yeah,
That's right.
This is what we ended up with, but I would also be interested in talking with you about other sort of simple heuristics that we could use to sort of confirm the assessment is consistent with other approaches.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
25. And 26. Okay, we're about halfway. The management strategy evaluation section, 27. 28. This is something that we had written in the pre-meeting review document that we just realized we should probably put in. Get in here in the MSE section, but it really applies to everybody, and we're essentially giving the communal pat on the back to everybody for really trying to integrate everything and using the MSC as a kind of focal point. So 29.
We certainly appreciate
Good. Thank you. 29.
I think the all except Alan bit is missing.
The ball and chain. No. 30. Okay, hearing none, scroll down, please. 31.
So regarding 31 and 32, I think they're redundant, and one of them can be removed or modified. But in 31, I'm a little bit concerned about how the example quantities are being defined, and especially the statement not from the space-time model. And my concern for that's twofold. One is the space-time model is the accepted survey output, and it accounts for the changes in the design every year. So that change, it basically is, without doing the space-time model, the change in the design can cause some wild swings in the WPUE potentially. But secondfold, the operating model is actually conditioned to the output from the space-time model. So it is possible that conditioning to the space-time model, and if that raw WPUE for an area because the design is missing some stations or whatever is quite different, an exceptional circumstance could be triggered almost immediately, even though the model was conditioned. And I'm just wondering what the SRB thinks about that, as well as the endorsements of the space-time model in the past. Does this imply that there is a better method than the space-time model?
No.
We had a lot of discussion about this, Alan.
Yeah, I guess the point here was that what exceptional circumstances are meant to do is kind of raise the flag, or not, either raise the flag that you appear to be operating outside the conditions under which a management procedure was tested. That's one. The other is to provide some guardrails or boundaries as to what would be deemed expected, so that somebody can't come in after the fact and say, well, I didn't expect, this is not doing what I expected, so we don't want it. Those are the main reasons. The not from space-time model was about having these metrics be as empirical as possible so that anybody could understand them. Now, from what you're saying, what I was thinking, because I wrote that not from space-time model, was that you could generate the expected distribution of the data, the raw data. You could simulate that from the space-time model under any design and any perturbation to the design. But now that we're talking about it, that as you bring up that example, it's going to be a lot of work. I would imagine it would be a considerable amount of work to do, and it just may be the reality that the space-time model is now how the index is done. So we can take that out and just actually, if we just take that out, I think that would leave it up to you to come up with some metrics that are, I wouldn't delete the whole thing. For example,
not
you
deleting
don't want to use,
model-based quantities.
yeah, okay. Using model-based quantities, yeah. One of what that was responding to was, looking at model probabilities and things like that, and those are different.
Yeah.
Those are models to models, and that's just not transparent at all.
Yep.
So I would just delete the not from space-time model and leave it up to the staff to. It's not what I meant.
Yeah, so we had a lot of discussion about this, Sean, and I made exactly the points that Alan made, not as elegantly, but I'm not sure that model-based quantities are, like the outputs from the space-time model, are wrong here. In fact, that's the way the index is developed, as we just said. So
Yeah.
So having model-based quantities would violate the transparency principle, suggests that you wouldn't want to use the space-time model output.
Yeah, I would agree with Olaf there.
Yeah.
What if that sentence using model-based quantities was deleted? If you want, there is transparency earlier on, and then say example quantities include blah blah, and remove the parentheses.
Yeah. Okay, so remove that sentence there, the using one.
One more small point of clarification. We might want to say actual mortality instead of catch, because we do have catch that ends up surviving. We try to use catch to refer to everything that's been captured, and then mortality to be the component that ends up dead.
That is a good point. The operating model is not modeling catch. It's just modeling mortality and the way it is. So it's not really applying DMRs at this point. In the future, it might, but
how can you measure?
I think that's a good.
How can you measure mortality? You can't observe whether fish survive or not if they've been released.
Right, and so but you have to remove the dead fish or the fish that suffered fishing mortality. That is what is being modeled. It's just modeling the discard mortality based on a number of covariates.
Okay, well, maybe a better approach here would be to take out all the examples and just recommend that or request that the Secretariat review possible indicators.
At SRB018, I think that'd be perfect, especially given this meeting to make requests to us.
And that could include, reviews of other jurisdictions and stuff that they use.
Does that capture it?
Yep. Okay.
If it may be useful to put that request as its own paragraph. I look to Dave to make a suggestion here, and then delete 32, and that will actually preserve the numbering for the rest of our look through today.
Yeah.
That would be ideal. If you just hit enter, make a new paragraph. That just keeps it clean.
Like that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Alan. It was, I think, an unresolved discussion that we had before.
And I look forward to further discussion. So
yeah, it's a very I mean, there's a lot to figure out there, as empirical as possible, but not more, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 33.
It's me again.
We know.
I wanted to, I wanted to bring up Sven's comment earlier today about the 5-year program, the plan, as you call it later, where he mentioned the 5-year program could include development of the MSE in the next 5 years, such that it's ready to go as this potential research tool in the following 5 years. And I don't know if you want to mention that here or you actually want to bring that up later. I didn't notice it in the later section as well. But I bring it up now, and the SRB can contemplate to discuss that now or later, or not at all.
Alan, I think we're all on the same page that this is where we'd like to end up, with using the MSC to prioritize research topics. And I think we just weren't sure what the best way to push toward that direction was. Is it with a statement here, or is it in the 5-year plan? Is it with a specific request, or just an agreement here?
I think this statement is great here, and I really do appreciate it. And I completely agree with the SRB. I'm just wondering if you want to add to this statement about the Sven's comment that the next 5 years could be spent developing the MSE to the point where it can be used to prioritize research topics. And the SRB, do they want to specifically state that? And do they want to state that here or in the actual program section?
I think we discussed that, and the conclusion we came to with regards to Dave's comments were a bit misleading with regards, well, unclear, shall we say. Our perception was slightly different. Our individual perception was slightly different, what he wanted in there. So in that section, we've mainly commented on format, and saying we've sort of fed back those other elements to the individuals, and I was convinced that you take it forward, as you say you will. We're stuck. I mean, really what we want to do is recommend that happen, but we can't recommend anything in this particular report, right? So that's where we're stuck, and we're kind of left it up to you. If Dave has a suggestion how he thinks that where that comment would be most effectively made, I think we're happy to put it there.
I'll leave it up to the SRB. I'm just already thinking ahead to the meeting next week with commissioners, and I've already created a slide that states that we had this discussion that potentially work could be done on the MSE to ready it for this goal, or this being a tool to prioritize research topics. So I can communicate that with commissioners that we had that discussion, or you can choose to put it in however you wish. I think that's completely up to you. I was just wondering if you wanted to put it in and help me out.
What do you think about the statement?
As we can tell, we're not just helping you, Alan. We're helping ourselves as well in that process.
Absolutely.
We've been pushing for this. So maybe we can put that in as an extra paragraph and just use the term urge to lend it a bit more emphasis than just noted.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sven. I think that will help not only myself, but also the commission in their discussion about prioritizing tasks for the MSE, at least over the next 1 to 2 years, and then they can think a little further on. as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the suggestion as to how you could include it without committing yourself to actually doing any evaluations. That was the point, and I think that reflects it.
I'm sorry, there's some child crying in the background here. There's nothing I can do about that other than mute wherever I can.
Sorry, that's me.
Paragraph 35. $36. Okay. It for the MSc section. Let's go to biological and ecosystem sciences. 37, 38. $39. We have a duplication coming up there. 40. $41. $42. When we scroll down a bit, I have a white thing blocking the bottom. There we go. So we're on 42. Down to 43. Yes. So, maturity ogive here has the same thing as above, but I'm sure it matters. 44.
Hi, this is Giuseppe. May I comment on this particular line?
Of course.
Yes. I do have a little bit of an issue with this statement. I think it doesn't accurately reflect the research objectives in this area and the progress that was made to achieve those objectives. I think the work that was conducted is foundational, necessary, required for our ability to refine, develop, improve the maturity archive. So I do have concern about the use of, those terms, inefficiencies in the data collection process. In my view, there were none. And I also have an issue with the second sentence, that the analysis of seasonal patterns in gonad development is not directly tied. I would argue the opposite, in fact. It is directly tied. It's necessary. Our plans to revise the maturity archive depend on the understanding of gonadal development that comes from those seasonal patterns through histology. If we're not talking about histological assessment of maturity archive, then we're not talking about the same thing. But if we are revising, developing, and improving the maturity archive through histology, that work is foundational, in my opinion. I'd like to see what the SRB says about this.
Yeah, Joseph, maybe the proper word there is not, it was not explicitly tied in the documents of the presentation to the development of the maturity ogive. I think we sort of got there eventually. But I think maybe this reflected our impression that the development of maturity ogive was not really given priority as the eventual goal here. And maybe that was sort of behind everything you were doing, but it wasn't maybe made explicit.
Yeah. One suggestion that I could. Yeah, go ahead, Sven.
The real basic problem was, the reason that it's about the confusion and the difference in the terminology that's the inefficiency. It's not about the sampling program if you want to determine the annual cycle of maturation, but in effect, what Ian was expecting was a proportion at age, and that's what he presumably, or we at least assumed you were delivering. You yourself said, oh, you must be meaning something different. And it's that terminology that is leading to the confusion or the difference of expectations. That's what I was trying to point out.
Right. I don't quite see it that way. I mean, our ultimate objective is to provide a revised maturity ogive, as we all understand it. But the current work has been leading to an understanding of the reproductive schedule. And
yes, but the program is at its end. You were saying you're going to deliver this, and we don't have an updated maturity ogive.
Right, and that's why you should probably look into the next 5-year research plan. A number of these research areas are continuing because there's...
Yes, but if I'm a commissioner, I see, oh, this ties up with this thing. You need to be explicit. Why don't you, if you had said, we're going to do in this 5-year, we're going to do a analysis of a comparison of the histology and the macroscopic staging or the endocrinology, right? We're going to do that, and that's a separate thing. Then nobody would be expecting a maturity ogive at the end of the 5 years, right? That is the point. It's about the confusion, not about the actual case.
Could I suggest one alternative to the wording of that paragraph? Maybe rather than a note, that could be perhaps replaced by a request that the IPHC Secretariat further demonstrate how the analysis of seasonal patterns in gonad development is tied to the development and improvement of the maturity ogive. Because this will be presented in the summary of the achievements of the first 5-year research plan to the SRB in SRB018 in September. Would that be?
That's not the point, Giuseppe. It's about developing that integrated plan.
Yeah, and I think we're communicating that now, and I think the point going forward that's relevant to the commission is the request. And, that's what I think would be more productive here at 44 would be just to request that explicit link is made. I don't think we need the background on the differences of expectations and things. I think that would make it better bullet.
It was more of a statement of they've made progress on integration, but there are still some issues, and that was just as an example. Yeah. That was the point. But if you want to make it into a special request,
I think the point's been made.
It now doesn't state that you still have those issues.
Right. I think this
This
text
is not
is
the
fine
only
as long as Joseph, understand that we're trying to communicate this as an example of a larger issue where it's helpful for us to see the eventual end goal of the biology research in terms of a quantity that's going into the stock assessment. I think we probably wouldn't have made this comment if the beginning of the presentation or the document referenced the maturity ogive as the end goal of the histology research.
And that the steps were there.
Right.
The steps from the histology research to confirming the macroscopic designation and so on. So I think that could just be something that be incorporated more and more broadly as well to other aspects. Are we happy with this? 44? Happy's maybe not such a great term. We can agree to it, hopefully. Hearing nothing, 45.
Joseph, this is just a note so that you and I and whoever else in the group do have that conversation at some point.
Yeah, that's well taken. Thank you. Hold on.
Okay, can we scroll down to progress on research projects? 46. Okay, scrolling down to 47. Okay. I don't know what's going on with breakout sessions. And I can't see anybody, so. Okay, no, I'm in full screen view, so I only get occasional messages. Okay, everything's fine?
I'm still good. I think everything's fine.
Okay. Okay, to the economics. 48. '49, I think we have to revise a bit. The SRB noted instead of noting. Okay.
It may have been okay given that you later state the SRB agreed.
Oh, sorry. True. Dave must have revised that. Missed that subtlety.
Sorry, I'm listening to another meeting at the same time. But no, the intention there is just to try and, instead of having two sentences broken with two different actions, just to mold it into one.
Okay. So 49. $50. 51. 52. Now, sorry, maybe Dave is out of the meeting, but I'm not sure agreed is the term here.
Go ahead and change it however you feel it's appropriate.
Let's change it to noted. It's noted because we have a request later on.
It's certainly fine. It's probably more something you would just want to track so that come the September meeting, depending on how the commission provides additional advice, you'll be able to then recouch it as a recommendation for the commission's consideration. So if the intention is just to track it at the moment, keep track of the issue, and then in September it'll be revisited with any actions that have been taken or any additional information from the commission that's been forthcoming, and then you can action it to the commission. But at this time, there's no real mechanism for the commission to formally consider the request and provide the SRB with information before the September meeting.
Okay,
So it's fine as is.
That sounds
is
good.
the short answer.
great.
And 53.
This mentions MSE, so I'll speak up again.
Okay.
I'm just curious here what may be better suited methods. I know Basha has been working real hard on doing this economic analysis, and I've been talking a lot with her about bringing it into the MSE framework. I'm just wondering if the SRB wanted to expand on this and maybe explain why these socioeconomic performance metrics are not best suited methods.
Well, yeah, and this was, we had quite a discussion over this, and we even, we specifically ordered this section to make it clear that we do value the socio or the economic impact analysis itself, the actual modeling approach is being done, and what we assume the purpose is. We've had to assume what the why it's being done and so on, and we would agree with that if our assumptions are correct, which is that it provides value to stakeholders and communities and everyone else about the value of the halibut fishery. So that now, when it comes to the MSE in particular, the MSE is another thing. It's talking about allocation of the resource and management of the resource in a dynamic way that we're not sure, given what little what we do understand and not about the economic impact analysis, that is going to tell you the things you may want to know. So and we're not saying it's not the best. It said we're saying that there may be others that, for example, if you, well, for one thing, we would like to see what methods are available to incorporate socioeconomic performance into MSE. And economic impact analysis is not the only one. I guarantee you that there are other ways of doing it. And so we'd like to see, we're not even asking for it, but we would assume we would see a review of those before something gets pulled into the MSE.
Yeah. Just so that it's not interpreted as potentially or downgrading the work that Bosch has done, is it possible maybe to change the word better suited to alternative methods to accomplish this?
Sure.
That's just what I was thinking. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, this will really be the first time the commission's seen this work, and I just want to highlight it as much as we can.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and we were trying to avoid passing judgment on it here. Just suggesting a broader consideration of how to produce performance metrics for the MSE, not to pass
Yeah,
judgment on what was done here.
yeah, I get that, and perhaps even the commission considers these socioeconomic factors outside of the MSE as well. So I think it's still a lot to be developed, and as your previous paragraph stated or earlier, they request, you request the commission to be a little bit more clear on that.
I think
Thanks a
what we
lot.
could also say at the end of this, to make it, scope it even further would be though. So though there may be alternative methods to accomplish this specific task. Because,
Yep.
that's, the specific task of MSE performance metrics, which okay. 53 is acceptable. Strike the word happy from my, from my language. Okay, moving on to the 5-year program, the plan. '54 and 55. I think you're trying to do some Canadian spelling there or something on prioritizes?
I'm sure I had a Z in it.
A Z, you mean? Yeah, so 55 was actually, it doesn't come across that way, the way it's worded there, but we were, it was a pat on the back kind of thing. So it's not, maybe noted and appreciates. Okay, and then I think this is the proper use of the term agreed for 56. Okay, moving on to 57. Can you scroll down a bit?
Just a general, just a reminder on 57 as well, is that it's not just the biological research priorities. It's what we're trying to do is make it a more holistic, integrated science and research plan. So where it would just be, where you've got biological research priorities, just read science and research priorities or something along those lines to match the title of the plan.
So you have forward-looking
Just call it the
document on
plan?
future science. I like it, future science and research priorities.
Future integrated science and research priorities.
Perfect.
Right, just the title.
For bullet D,
Maybe,
would it make sense to add for stock assessment and MSE, given the discussion about the additional expansion of focus to include the MSE more explicitly in this process?
Yeah, agreed.
and the bullet above it, I would change first to previous.
Then change first to previous 5-year plan in E.
And then objects in the next line would be objectives, I assume. Then of the proposed 5-year plan. Okay, 58. String of ins there, but cast in. We change the next in to MSE and SA performance. I got too detailed here, but okay. So 58, 59, another bulleted list. Nine. Okay, I think that's it. Next section. Is there anything left? I don't think so. Report of the 18th session. Okay, so
I think that's it, right?
60.
Yep.
We should limit ourselves to no more than 60 paragraphs.
Sounds perfect to me.
Okay, are all the names good down the bottom?
We have the team
Accurate?
here who go and record, and we'll add those in again. But if you do
Okay.
notice anything that's currently there that's a mistake, yeah, let us know.
I have to keep track, make sure when Olaf gets promoted, that gets accounted for in there.
Thanks, Sean. Might hit you up for a letter.
Okay.
That's it. We're good.
I think that's it. I think
So if
a
that's the
wrap
case,
on
Chair, we
SRB
can
18.
consider the. Yeah, thank you very much. Consider the report adopted. If I think Olaf, you're handling it, so if you could just save that track changes version and email it to me, we'll get those changes
Will
made
do.
into the master and publish it this afternoon. So thank you very much.